Lingue originali.
È tempo di novità a Lingue Originali. Novità che vi sveleremo in tutti e 3 episodi. Sapete, ce ne sono 3 tutte le settimane su Caffè Italia. Uno dedicato alla letteratura in lingua inglese, uno a quella in lingua tedesca, il terzo dedicato alla letteratura in lingua francese. Partiamo con questo episodio dalla letteratura in lingua inglese. Abbiamo salutato, credo momentaneamente, Alan Bennett, perché Marco Piovaz ha deciso di raccontarci una storia che ci avvicina ai nostri tempi. Un'opera che arriva fino ai tempi della Brexit, con le sue contraddizioni. Quindi siamo in Inghilterra, era chiaro, non avrebbe potuto essere diversamente. Vi presentiamo un autore che è venuto anche in Italia in occasione dell'ultimo Book City Milano, che si intitola Jonathan Coe, nativo delle Midlands inglesi, quindi avete presente Birmingham, Manchester UK, eccetera eccetera, Wolverhampton, Stratford-upon-Avon, terra di Shakespeare. Ci localizziamo lì. È nato a Bromsgrove nel Worcestershire, ha studi importanti: King Edward's School di Trinity College di Cambridge, Warwick University. E all'Università di Warwick ha insegnato anche poesia. Ma ha fatto tante cose, è appassionato anche di musica, Jonathan Coe, pensate. Scrive di jazz e di cabaret. Ha fatto la gavetta, è partito come correttore di bozze, poi è diventato scrittore e giornalista freelance. È un autore assolutamente indipendente anche quando firma articoli di giornale. Qual è la sua cifra? La sua cifra è la satira. La gran parte delle sue opere, che sono veramente tante, entra nei meandri della società civile e non fa eccezione neanche l'opera da cui con Marco Piovaz andremo a leggere in lingua originale alcuni estratti. L'opera si intitola Middle England, è pubblicato in italiano da Feltrinelli, quindi lo trovate comodamente in libreria, ed è un romanzo, un quadro molto comico ma anche molto serio della vita pubblica e privata in Gran Bretagna dal 2010 al 2018. Ne parleremo più diffusamente nei prossimi episodi, in totale 5 in questa occasione, dedicati a Middle England di Jonathan Coe. Ma dicevo, prima di dare la parola a Marco Piovaz, sono tante le opere di Jonathan Coe, di vario genere. Ci sono romanzi, racconti, libri per bambini e alcune biografie, quindi potremmo definirlo, senza tema di smentita, un autore eclettico. Il suo ultimo libro, quello che ha presentato a Book City Milano, l'ultima edizione, si intitola Barnville ed è pubblicato anche questo da Feltrinelli, così come Middle England. Allora, Lingue Originali, primo episodio realizzato nel mese di marzo 2023, dedicato a Middle England di Jonathan Coe. Il primo estratto subito dalla voce di Marco Piovaz.
April 2010. The funeral was over. The reception was starting to fizzle out. Benjamin decided it was time to go. "Dad," he said, "I think I'm going to make a move." "Good," said Colin. "I'll come with you." They headed for the door and managed to escape without saying any goodbyes. The village street was deserted, silent in the late sunshine. "We shouldn't really just leave like this," said Benjamin, glancing back towards the pub doubtfully. "Why not? I've spoken to everyone I want to. Come on, take me to the car." Benjamin allowed his father to hold him by the arm in a faltering grip. He was steadier on his feet that way. With indescribable slowness, they began to shuffle along the street towards the pub car park. "I don't want to go home," said Colin. "I can't face it without her. Take me to your place." "Sure," said Benjamin, even as his heart plummeted. The vision he had been promising himself, solitude, meditation, a cold glass of cider at the old wrought iron table, the murmur of the river as it rippled by on its timeless course, disappeared, spiraled away into the afternoon sky. Never mind, his duty today was to his father. "Would you like to stay the night?" "Yes, I would," said Colin. But he didn't say thank you. He rarely did these days. The traffic was heavy, and the drive to Benjamin's house took almost an hour and a half. They drove through the heart of Middle England, more or less following the course of the River Severn through the towns of Bridgnorth, Alvely, Quat, Much Wenlock and Cressid. A placid, unmemorable journey where the only punctuation marks were petrol stations, pubs and garden centres, while brown heritage signs dangled the more distant temptations of wildlife centres, National Trust houses and arboretums in front of the bored traveller. The entrance to each village was marked not only by the sign announcing its name, but by a flashing reminder of the speed at which Benjamin was driving, and a warning notice telling him to slow down. "They're a nightmare, aren't they, these speed traps?" Colin said. "The buggers are out to get money from you every step of the way." "Prevents accidents, I suppose," said Benjamin. His father grunted skeptically. Benjamin turned on the radio, tuned as usual to Radio 3. He was in luck. The slow movement of Fauré's piano trio. The melancholy, unassuming contours of the melody not only seemed a fitting accompaniment to the memories of his mother that were filling his mind today, and presumably Colin's, but also seemed to mirror in sound the gentle curves of the road and even the muted greens of the landscape through which it carried them. The fact that the music was recognizably French made no difference. There was a commonality here, a shared spirit. Benjamin felt utterly at home in this music. "Turn that racket off, can't you?" Colin said. "Can't we listen to the news?" Benjamin let the last 30 or 40 seconds of the movement play out, then switched to Radio 4. It was the PM programme, and immediately they were plunged into a familiar world of gladiatorial combat between interviewer and politician. In 1 week's time there would be a general election. Colin would vote Conservative, as he had done in every British election since 1950, and Benjamin, as usual, was undecided, except in the sense that he had decided not to vote. Nothing they were likely to hear on the radio in the next 7 days would make any difference. Today's big story seemed to be that the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, fighting for re-election, had been caught on microphone describing a potential supporter as a sort of bigoted woman, and the media were making the most of it. "The Prime Minister has shown his true colours," a Conservative MP was saying gleefully. Anyone who expresses these legitimate concerns is simply a bigot in his view. And that's why we can never have a serious debate our immigration in this country. But isn't it true that Mr. Cameron, your own leader, is every bit as reluctant? Benjamin turned the radio off without explanation. For a while, they drove in silence. She couldn't stand politicians, Colin said, bringing some subterranean train of thought to the surface, and not needing to specify who he meant by she. He spoke in a low voice, thick with regret and repressed emotion. Thought they were all as bad as each other, all on the fiddle, every one of them, fiddling their expenses, not declaring their interests, holding down half a dozen jobs on the side. Benjamin nodded, while remembering that in fact it was Colin himself, not his late wife, who was obsessed with the venality of politicians. It was one of the few subjects on which this habitually taciturn man could become talkative, and perhaps it would be better to let this happen now, to stop him from being distressed by more painful thoughts. But Benjamin rebelled against the idea. Today they had bid farewell to his mother, and he wasn't going to let the sanctity of that occasion be tarnished by one of his father's rants. "What I always liked about Mum, though," he said, by the way of diversion, "was that she never sounded bitter about stuff like that. You know, if she disapproved of something, it didn't make her angry. It just made her sort of sad." Yes, she was a gentle soul, Colin agreed. "One of the best." He said no more than that, but after a few seconds took a grimy-looking handkerchief out of his trouser pocket and wiped both eyes with it, slowly and carefully. "It's going to be weird for you," said Benjamin, "being by yourself. But I know you'll manage. I'm sure of it." Colin stared into space. 55 years we were together. "I know, Dad. It's going to be tough. But Lois will be close by a lot of the time. And I'm not far away either. Not really." They drove on. Benjamin lived in a converted mill house on the banks of the River Severn, on the outskirts of a village just northeast of Shrewsbury. The house was approached down a single-track road, overhung with trees, its hedgerows densely overgrown on either side. He had moved to this absurdly remote and secluded spot at the beginning of the year, the sale of his 2-bedroom flat in Belsize Park having funded the purchase with enough capital left over to support his modest lifestyle for a few years to come. The house was far too big for a single man. But then he had not been single when he had bought it. There were 4 bedrooms, 2 sitting rooms, a dining room, a large open-plan kitchen complete with Aga, and a study with generous leaded windows overlooking the river. So far, Benjamin had been extremely happy there, dispelling his friends' and family's early suspicions that he had made a terrible mistake. The house was full of treacherous corners and steep, narrow flights of stairs. It was entirely unsuitable as a place to bring his 82-year-old father. Nonetheless, with some difficulty, Benjamin managed to get him out of the car, up the stairs into the sitting room, up the next flight of stairs, shorter but with a tricky right-angle turn, into the kitchen, through the back door, and then down the flight of metal steps onto the terrace. He found him a cushion, poured him a can of lager and was about to settle down with him for some stilted waterside conversation when he heard a car pull up outside the front door. Who the hell's that? Colin, who had not heard anything, merely looked at him in bewilderment.
Era il primo estratto da Middle England di Jonathan Coe, letto per voi da Marco Piovaz a Lingue Originali su Caffè Italia. Vi ricordo che Middle England lo trovate in lingua italiana, in libreria, pubblicato da Feltrinelli. Lingue Originali ogni venerdì, sabato e domenica alle ore 22 vi propone grandi pagine della letteratura inglese, tedesca e francese in lingua originale, in compagnia rispettivamente di Marco Piovaz, Nadia Meroni, Barbara Marchand. E quando ci sono Marco Piovaz e Nadia Meroni, Dario Albertini vi presenta le opere da cui loro ci leggono alcune pagine in lingua italiana, come modo per facilitarvi tanto l'ascolto quanto magari facilitarvi a essere invogliati, ecco, ad andare in libreria a leggere, a comprare per poi leggere le opere che vi proponiamo in lingua italiana. Da Dario Albertini, grazie per l'ascolto, appuntamento alla prossima puntata di Lingue Originali su Caffè Italia.
Lingue Originali.